Yeah. All right. Everybody's popping on. Judy, Cade, welcome, welcome.
I have to take my dog to the vet, so I'm only going to stay on for about 20 minutes. So I didn't want to miss this.
All right.
Very important.
Well, maybe we'll start with you then, Judy, since you got to run off in 20 minutes. You got any questions for us today? You got any updates on where you're at with your books?
Blame it on the puppy. Yeah, what I decided, I've already published a book, and what I want to do is reinvigorate it. And some things that Josh, you had spoken about, the book giveaway and getting some people engaged on LinkedIn. And I'd really like to pursue that. I think saying, hey, and I'm not sure how to phrase that and how not to look like tacky or whatever, but I'd love to get my book in front of 10 people and target them to, my qualified audience. I could post it in a group or something. That would be one strategy. The other strategy is I thought about publishing like a smaller, maybe workbook or something, and adding that to LinkedIn as a companion workbook, not LinkedIn, adding it to Amazon as a companion workbook. So kind of rooming these things through my head. And by the way, there's a notice that went through on LinkedIn. Anyone using the name LinkedIn in their title, LinkedIn is on a rampage right now, and they are getting people cease and desist letters and doing all this stuff. And it's like, oh my gosh. So I did not have LinkedIn in my title, and I was saying, oh, I should have. And now I'm like, I am so glad I don't have LinkedIn in my title. So those are my two things.
Well, I have not received a letter yet, and I've got a book that has LinkedIn really big on the cover. So I'll let you know if I receive a letter. I mean, if I don't get a letter, I'll feel like I'm kind of left out. So
Gosh,
if they're sending out cease and desist letters, I hope I get one.
it's insane.
Although I'm not sure what they can do at this point. It's like it's out there. Like
I know. It's sort of like
in the Library of Congress or whatever. Like, I mean, yeah.
So any thoughts on how I might phrase it so it makes people like, I don't want to get random people, and I think we talked about this, to keep it to the United States, so I'm not shipping books to Australia, and to try to get qualified people. Like, what skin do they have in the game to get the book?
Well, on the one hand, you don't want to make it too difficult or nobody will sign up, right? You've got to have pretty low barrier to entry. Even when you're giving away a book, you've got to make the barrier to entry pretty low.
Okay.
On the other hand, like you said, you don't want to get a bunch of random people who are getting it just because it's free, which is why it's really easy to give away electronic copies of the book, because you can automate the whole thing and then you don't really care who's getting it, whether it's random people, because you don't have to send it to them.
Okay.
And so we talked about ConvertKit, I think, last week, and you can set up a ConvertKit page. You can make it really easy so people can go sign up. You grab their email address, and then you can automatically email them a PDF of your book.
I actually have BookFunnel. BookFunnel's been really good. It sends them, they can choose like if they want EPUB or whatever. So BookFunnel's been great.
Yeah. So you can use that type of setup to give the book away and give the electronic version away. When it comes to giving the print book away, that's where you run into a big mess with international shipping and all that stuff, and people getting the book that you're like, well, I really want this book to go to people that are going to turn into clients or something, not just some random person, right? So with that type of giveaway though, what I usually do is I establish some sort of criteria where I say, if you are this type of person, you have this title, you have this role, I would like to send you a free copy of my book, because that way I can verify that. And there's a way for me to get out of it. And so I've done things in the past where with my first book that was geared towards chief marketing officers, I would say, hey, I'm doing a giveaway of 20 copies of the Audible version of my book. If you're a CMO, I will send you a code so that you can get a free Audible book on me. And that way, if they message me and they're like, hey, I'm not a CMO, but I'm really into marketing or something, well, I can make a call whether I want to send it to them or not. But it's easy for me to say, oh, sorry, I'm only sending this to CMOs, but maybe I'll do another giveaway in the future. It's an easy, not so awkward out for me if I set up the criteria that way.
Okay.
Do you feel like that's relevant to your situation?
I think so.
Screen people out somehow that way?
I think if you qualify them, and then this way I can engage with them that way. And if I'm not sending the copy, I can decide if I want to send them a copy. Actually, if I look at their profile, I'll say, you know what, I'll give them a choice. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. There was something else to mention. I've seen some people do this, and I don't know if it's against Amazon's rules, but they were saying to people, if you buy my book and review it, I'll send you a gift card or something, or a credit.
Yeah, don't do that. It's Amazon, it does go blatantly against Amazon rules, and they will enforce it, and they will do their best to figure it out. And it's just not worth the risk, because here's what happens. If you do any sort of incentive, anything whatsoever, incentivizing people to leave a review, other than just asking politely, if you have any sort of incentive, you run the risk that somebody leaving a review mentions it in their review. People will do stuff like this. Like, you give a book away and they'll be like, yeah, I got this book for free, and so I'm here reviewing it. And then Amazon has, their algorithm going through, and they detect that. If they see that, they might kick you off of Amazon. They might shut down your whole account. And so it's just not worth the risk. And so, I mean, as the closest that I'll get to that, because I'm usually pretty risky about stuff, but I'm really risk averse when it comes to keeping my Amazon account, my author account live. And so the closest I would ever get to that is I might say, hey, I'm doing a book giveaway. And then I would give out the book. And then I might follow up and say, hey, you got a free copy of my book. If you feel comfortable, I would appreciate you giving an honest review on Amazon.
Okay.
And they can do it or they cannot do it. But that way there's no quid pro quo. I mean, there is a little bit of, what's it called? The
expectation, unfulfilled expectations there.
the reciprocity. People feel like, oh, he gave me a book, I should probably go leave a review. There's a little bit of that going on. So even that you could say is a little bit of a gray line type thing, but I'm not saying you have to give me a review in order to get a book that way. I've already given them the free book. I'm just following up and saying, hey, I'd appreciate you giving a review. That's about as close as I'll get to pushing people to give reviews.
What do you think about Goodreads? Does that hold any cred? I think that's Google Goodreads.
I've been quite active on Goodreads, and both as a reader and as an author. And I haven't yet seen a situation or a use case where I can say Goodreads is good for everybody in terms of authors promoting their book and getting the word out there. I think there are definitely some people on Goodreads who have used it to build an audience, to get a lot of people reading their book. Is it the best use of their time? I don't know, because I've tried stuff on there and I just haven't seen the return on my investment there. And so I would rather put my time and money into running Amazon ads or doing speaking events or doing giveaways on LinkedIn. There are just a lot of other things I would do first before I would do Goodreads. That doesn't mean it might not work for you. I haven't seen it work for me or anybody that I know firsthand. I see other people who are really popular on Goodreads, but I just don't know what effort or exactly what tactics they're using to get that return, and whether it's even the best return for them.
Well, I think your insights hold a lot of weight, so I will heed that. I don't need to make more work on things that aren't a great return. And I don't want to hog this up. So if anyone else wants to jump in, I feel like, because I got to deal with my pup. I just appreciate the time. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, if I were you, I do the giveaways. I might do sort of a webinar giveaway too, like host webinars, and then you can do automated webinars. I'm a big fan of webinars, even though I haven't done them recently, but I've done them in the past. And they've been fantastic for building my email list and for getting the right people in touch with me. And so I really am a big fan of webinars. And if you can pair it with a giveaway and say, hey, sign up for my webinar, you'll get a free copy ebook of my book, I think you can attract a lot of people there and build your email list and everything else good from that. It does take a little work to set up a webinar, but
that I like, because it's actually giving some insight. And would you use like a webinar jam or something like that, where you can just push it out?
Yeah, webinar jam's a good one. I think Ever Webinar is the other one that's good. it's been a couple of years. I'm a little bit out of the loop on the webinar stuff, but yeah, I know Webinar Jam, and I think maybe Webinar Jam's the other one, or the one that is my preferred one. I've tried a bunch of them and some of them are okay. But I think Webinar Jam was one of the better ones.
How did you, for your book, what did you do? Like, do you go through the book or do you just pick out, sort of, I mean, did you do one for this one?
No, I haven't. I should. But if I were doing a webinar for that, I would probably just pick a few chapters and go through those and say, hey, I'm going to share my top 5 LinkedIn tips, or my top 5 LinkedIn tips for CEOs or for students or for whatever audience I was going after. And then I would customize it for that audience to try to attract that audience.
Okay. And you would just do like a talking head, or like, I mean,
it would depend. I mean, I'd probably do a common, if it were LinkedIn, I mean, well, and you are doing LinkedIn. So I would probably get on the screen and show people stuff, because I think that's the most helpful. So if you can get screen sharing and show people, and actually, I have done this kind of as a webinar format for the LinkedIn book, is I would do webinars and I would, see, I lied. I did do webinars for the LinkedIn book. I just forgot about it. But this reminded me that I was doing webinars, and what I would do is I would actually go through and analyze somebody's profile. And I would get them ahead of time to agree to it. I'd say, hey, I'll give you a free LinkedIn profile teardown, but if you want it for free, you have to let me do it in front of a bunch of other people and record it and show them. So if you can handle that, I'll do it for free for you. And then I would do that. I would just go through their profile and I'd say, this is what you're doing well. This is where you need improvement. Here's what you need to fix. And I would go through that, and people found that very practical and very helpful. And so I felt like that was great content. And then also I didn't have to worry about my face, because they were just looking at the screen the whole time.
So did you find people, like, you have a huge audience, did you like just put a post to get people, or did you message people specifically? Like,
I had my email list already, so I was sending it out to my email list. I would post on LinkedIn and get people to opt into the webinar that way.
Okay.
And Facebook and everything else. A lot of people in the past have run Facebook ads to promote webinars. Of course, if it's a LinkedIn thing, you would prefer to do it on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn ads, if you've tried them, they're kind of a mess still and expensive and all that. So
okay.
I'm not sure LinkedIn ads would be worth your time. I'm not sure Facebook ads are really worth it anymore for webinars, but again, I'm not the webinar expert. So you can, there is a guy out there, and I can't remember his name, but there's a guy who runs a podcast about doing webinars, not specifically for books, just webinars generally. And he's got a ton of episodes with a ton of great information. And he probably has a couple episodes where he talks about books or something. I should look that up. I can't remember his name, but he's like the webinar guy. In fact, that might be the name of his podcast or something, but there's this one guy out there, and he just talks endlessly about podcasts and gives really practical information on how to leverage them.
This is great. You got, all the wheels are turning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. You are a gem.
All right. Well, thank you, Judy.
Thank you. I'll stay for a couple more minutes. Go ahead.
All right. Sounds good. Who wants to go next? Who's got book questions for me? All right, Stephen.
So my question revolves around the actual advertising piece. So my book just launched 4 days ago, or I guess went on pre-order 4 days ago. And it's cool because I'm #1 on Amazon in business management. I'm #1 in HR, like in some of my target fields. I'm excited about that. I know that's not going to stick. It's only been 4 days. But I'm just curious from an advertising perspective. I mean, I've shared on with my network on Instagram, because I have Instagram followers. I've got LinkedIn. I've got what do you call it? Facebook, I guess. I don't really count Facebook that much, but I do have Facebook followers. So that's really the only place I've really kind of posted, hey, this is what's happening. And I haven't done any giveaways yet. I didn't even think about doing giveaways. So I've only done strictly here, go pre-order. And it's gone fairly well, but I'm just curious from an advertising perspective, what are some good places to potentially advertise? Like you had mentioned, LinkedIn is not a good place to advertise, because I was thinking of boosting one of my posts, but now I'm like, well, I'm already getting enough traction in the groups I'm in or in my own network. because I have like 4,000 people in my network there. And so I feel like I'm getting enough traction there. I probably don't need to boost. But if I wanted to boost something, or if I wanted to advertise something, like my target audience is business, right? Because it's a nonfiction book, specifically the human resource world. And so I'm just curious, what are some of the good places to potentially advertise, and how do you kind of go about that? Because I don't know what I don't know. This is the first book I've ever written. I've never spent, I don't know. I have no clue what I'm doing. So.
All right. So how to get started advertising for books. So the number one place to advertise your book is on Amazon. So Amazon has their own ad system. Are you familiar with this at all, Stephen? Or
Like I said, I got my book on Amazon, like I said, for like 4 days ago for the pre-order. And that is my only experience with Amazon, was loading my book, loading my ebook, making them both available for pre-order. They launch on March 1st officially. And that is literally the extent of my experience on Amazon. I created my author profile page, and that's it.
all right, cool.
My experience, yeah.
So write this name down, Mark Dawson. It's Dawson.
Okay.
Mark Dawson, Amazon ads. Google that and you'll find this guy's course. I can't remember what it costs, but it's not like one of these super expensive $3,000 courses. It's like $200 or something.
Because there are some out there, I've seen some ridiculous stuff. And I'll tell you what, when you go live on LinkedIn, all of a sudden you get all these messages from people random that they want to become your marketing guru, and it drives me bonkers. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so I'm just Googling it right now just to make sure that this comes up. Yeah, okay, so Mark Dawson's ads for authors. He lists it. That's what it comes up as in Google. His website is selfpublishingformula.com. But there may be a better Amazon ads course out there. I don't know. This is the best one I've seen though. And I think it has the best advice on how to run an Amazon ads campaign, taking you from start to finish. Like it gives you all the details. I'm not an affiliate or anything like that. I bought it and I think it's really good. That's where I would start with advertising, because the great thing about Amazon ads is you're actually advertising your book. So when you sell the book, you make money. And the idea is that you can get your book sales to pay for the ad campaign itself. That's the goal here, is if you're making more money off the ads than you're spending on the ads, then you're great. It's just free advertising, right? And
Josh,
Daniel, yes.
Can you post that link onto the chat?
Yeah,
if you can.
I will do that right
because
now.
you know, I think all of us are at a stage where that will become very, very handy to learn. You know, and I hope to learn before the book goes onto Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah. So check this out.
Thank you very much.
But yeah, Mark Dawson's advertising for authors. It's great. Also, Kindlepreneur. I'll get the link for that too. Kindlepreneur has a ton of great resources for self-published authors. And one thing I would look into, Stephen, with Kindlepreneur is he has a lot of blog posts that are just tips on how to set things up on Amazon the right way as an author to maximize your visibility, even before you start thinking about advertising. Just like the categories you choose. I mean, little things like Amazon, when you set up your book, they let you choose 3 categories, but you can actually have 10 categories, but you have to email somebody and then they'll add you to 10 categories, which means you're showing up in more places and you're going to get more book sales. There's just a lot of little things like that you can find on the Kindlepreneur website. Just little tips and tricks. And he has software that you can buy. I can't remember what it's called, Rocket something. I think it's like he has software that will help you choose categories and keywords, also with like international Amazon websites, and make sure that your website's showing up on the UK website and the Germany website and the Italian website. So there's just all these little tips that he has that are pretty easy to implement. And so those are 2 great resources for just taking advantage of the tools that Amazon is already giving you.
Cool.
I would not run LinkedIn ads for books. Maybe there's somebody out there who has figured out how to do that effectively. I wouldn't do it just because LinkedIn ads are expensive. I wouldn't do Facebook ads for my book unless I really had that book tapped into a lead funnel that led to other business. So if the book is a giveaway type of thing that leads people to come and hire you for consulting or whatever, and you've really got that funnel running well, then it might make sense to do Facebook ads and LinkedIn ads. But if you're just selling the book and then that's it, people have the book and they can call you, they can not call you, whatever, I wouldn't do any sort of other advertising. I think it's just going to be too expensive.
I'll second that and just add, Steve, you are in Utah. AJ Smith is like the king of LinkedIn ads. And what he says is it's usually about a $2,500 to $5,000 a month spend.
Yeah.
So, and you don't want to do promoted stuff because once you start doing that, it's like with Facebook, then your regular stuff, your organic reach is going to tank.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. So this week alone, after my book launch, I got 5 or 6 people that want me to speak at their conference now.
Oh, that's great.
Good. Yeah, I did 25 conferences last year, and I would talk about my book coming out. That's how I kind of built up my audience. Now that I'm there, suddenly the floodgates have opened, and I just, it's almost overwhelming. I'm excited, don't get me wrong, it's really cool, but at the same time I'm just like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? So I appreciate the author book that you have, the one that you had us download in the Word document, because I've already started reading that about this, creating like your book in the center, and then you kind of branch off in all these other areas. And I already see 3 of those branches working for me because it's already happening. I'm already getting requests for them. I actually sent over 2 contracts today to speak at a conference. And so it's starting. It's crazy to see that it actually works.
Well, I'll tell you what you do now, Stephen, when you're getting all these inquiries, you start charging more.
Ah, okay. Because I don't know what I don't know, right? I'm charging like $3,000 to be a keynote for some of these like SHRM conferences and stuff. I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know if I should do more or less. I have no clue, right? Now that I have a book behind me, I'm getting, it's suddenly you're more credible. It's weird how that works.
It is. So I'll tell you what a speaker's bureau told me. Speaker's bureau told me that if you're already doing public speaking, you're already getting paid to speak, and you don't have a book, you're probably making somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000 per event. And of course, this is different for different industries and different people and situations and all sorts of stuff. But he said that's kind of your average speaker who doesn't have a book is making $3,000 to $5,000 per event. He said generally a published author with a decent book behind them is going to be in the 10 to 15 range is what they're looking for.
Okay.
So he said, so that's what a guy from a speaker's bureau told me. And that's what I saw personally with my experience too, is that I was getting paid in that range, 3 to 5 to do speaking events. As soon as I published my first book, like immediately I started getting people reaching out, and I was bidding 10 to 20, and people were like, okay. And it was just like, I couldn't have done that before I had the book. Yeah. So I would definitely up your fees, but I mean, maybe you don't want to jump to 10 to 15, but I would definitely be testing out like 4 to 5 and see how that goes. And if that goes well, test out 5 to 6, 6 to 7, and I would just keep upping it.
Yeah. So I assume it's probably not best to publish your speaking fees so that you have that flexibility. I would assume, because I've got a website now, and I was thinking of putting my speaking information on there. Hire me as a speaker or whatever, or contact me about becoming a speaker for your event.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about putting the fees on there and saying, well, here's what it is, but I wasn't sure I wanted to do that, right? So that makes a lot of sense.
Most people don't put their fees out there unless they've got so much business. They're just like, I can afford to put my fees out there, and what do I care? So you'll see it on some speaker bureaus. They'll list what somebody costs to book. But usually those are people who are charging like 30 to 50 or something.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if I were in your shoes, I probably wouldn't.
I've never heard of that before. But speaker bureau, what is that?
A speaker bureau? A speaker bureau, unlike what everybody wishes it was, they don't find you gigs. They just manage gigs for you. So if you're getting so many inquiries, you're like, I don't have time to follow up with all these people, then you can go to a speakers bureau and they will manage it for you. They'll screen people. They'll make sure that you're getting the best gigs only, and then they take a cut. Gotcha. And yeah, and then, so I mean, most speaker bureaus are full of people who have too many speaking gigs coming their way. Like they're getting 200 requests every year, and they're like, I can only take 30 of these. So they go to a speakers bureau, and the speakers bureau says, we will whittle this down and we will negotiate the best deal for you on the top 30. Gotcha. And you're like, yeah, I'm willing to give up 10% because that's worth me not having to go through those 200 and figure it all out.
Okay, cool.
But they don't find you speaking gigs.
Okay.
A lot of speakers find that out the hard way.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to have a lot of trouble finding speaking gigs because the HR world is a very small world. And I am fairly known in that world. And so I think that's why I've got requests already, because I'm all 5 requests I got this week were because somebody referred me to them. And they said, you need to go talk to this guy, right? And so, yeah. So I'm not too worried about that, but I do want to make sure that I'm not underpricing myself, right? So that's good to know. That's great.
I would be asking at least 4 to 5. And then if you get that easily and nobody bats an eye, I would definitely push it into the 5 to 7 range. I have a friend who does about 60 events a year, and he charges like 7 to 8. And so, and he's done hundreds of events, but he's and he's got multiple books out there and everything, but he feels comfortable in that 7 to 8 range. So that's kind of where he's stuck.
Cool. Okay. Those are my main questions. So I'll let somebody else take the turn now. So
cool. All right. Daniel, Kate, either of you want to go? Daniel? Oh, you're still on mute.
On mute. Yeah. You were talking about self-publishing versus selling your concept to a publisher. I am seriously looking at the self-publishing part. And I have, being in Hong Kong, I have sources for printing and everything and have the finished book already. Now, if you self-publish, how do you get the book into the pipeline?
Sure. So if you self-publish, I mean, it depends what the pipeline is. If the pipeline is Amazon,
yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I also have my personal pipeline, but
right.
You don't want it to end right there.
Okay. So if the pipeline is Amazon, then what you want to do is you want to, of course, the soft cover book and the ebook you can do directly through Amazon with print on demand, POD, print on demand. So
yeah,
you just set that up, upload your files. They give you all the directions. It's easy. And so you've got those two taken care of. The Audible version you would do through ACX, which of course is owned by Amazon, but they're still kind of separate. So then you do the audiobook through ACX, and that gets it on Amazon. The hardcover has always been the hardest part to get on Amazon, but that's a lot easier now. And so you would go through a company called Ingram Spark for that. And
are they like the Ingram publisher?
Yes.
Okay.
So Ingram Spark. Yeah, they have a bunch of different brands that have the word Ingram in it, but Ingram Spark is the place to go. And yeah, Steven says he used Ingram Spark too. So it's just ingramspark.com. I put the link in the chat there.
Okay.
And with Ingram Spark, you can do hardcover and they will deliver it to Amazon on demand, print on demand. So you don't have to print 1,000 copies and have them sitting in your garage and figure out how do you get them to Amazon. You can just set it up with Ingram Spark and they take care of everything. And so my LinkedIn book, I've got a bunch of the hardcover there on my shelf. If you've seen my book, you cannot tell the difference between my book and something that was traditionally published. The cover is the same hardcover.
Yeah.
The dust jacket is the same. There's literally no difference. And I don't have to worry about it. When Amazon needs more of it, Ingram sends them over. I don't know exactly how it happens. I just know that it happens, and that's all I care about. And so that's the way to go.
When you say print on demand, that means they get the order and then the book gets printed, or are they print in small quantities?
My understanding is they'll do small quantities. So Ingram might print, let's say 100 and send them over to Amazon. And if they'll sell out really fast, maybe they'll send over 200 the next time. I mean, they're trying to predict demand, but they'll predict as well as they can. And then they try to, I mean, Ingram doesn't want to miss out on sales. Amazon doesn't want to miss out on sales. So their incentives are aligned with your incentives. They're using all their technology to try to figure out how to make sure that your book is there when somebody wants to buy it.
Okay.
However, Amazon also doesn't want to sit on a bunch of inventory. They don't want to order 2,000 copies of your book.
Right.
And then they sell 200 and 1,800 of them sit there for the next few years.
Right.
So
okay.
They work this back and forth. I don't know exactly how it works. I just know that it works. And I've never had an issue with, I'm just looking it up right now just to make sure. But yeah, I'm looking at my Amazon listing for my LinkedIn book here, and the hardcover's there. It doesn't say low quantity or anything like that. I know during COVID, when we had the supply chain issues, there were lots of issues with paper.
Everything. Yeah.
And so there were a lot of people complaining about Ingram Spark and saying, hey, my book's not on Amazon. Like, what's going on? And Ingram was just saying, hey, normally it takes us 6 weeks to print these. Now it's taking 6 months because we have to wait for paper. But that was a once in a lifetime type of thing. So, So, yeah.
So alternatively, could I just say, I have X number of books sitting on the other side of the Pacific, and whenever Amazon asks, I'll send over, 500 or something like that?
So Amazon used to have a service where you could send them your inventory and they would warehouse it, and then it would be available. They say that they paused the service. I mean, they basically stopped taking new people into that service about, I want to say it was about 3 years ago. Ooh. And I kept waiting for it to reopen, and I kept an eye on it for a while, and it just wasn't reopening. And I haven't checked it in the last year or so because Ingram's just been a better solution for me. And so I don't know if that option is open again now, but it would be a major headache to ship 100 or 200 books at a time. And then I think they charged you for holding your inventory there. And so that's why
I can see that.
It's so much better, I think, to just work with Ingram, because they will make sure that Amazon has your book. You don't have to worry about inventory. It's zero cost. They're just taking the money out of the sales. And so there's zero ongoing cost, zero upfront cost to you. And it's there when it needs to be. I think it's just hands down the easiest solution.
Right. So just to clarify, and you understand me because we met for a while. So basically, there will be two physical books. One will be printed by Ingram, sold on Amazon, and the other will be on the other side of Pacific, where I hold inventory and I send out through my channels over there.
Right. Yeah. So the ones that you've already printed, that goes everywhere else. But even Amazon and Ingram, they'll work together even to get your book internationally. So if somebody says that, I mean, if somebody's in Singapore and they order your book on Amazon, Ingram's going to take care of it and get it shipped over there. Or there's the international
book depository.
Is that the one? Yeah, Book Depository is kind of the international version of Amazon in a lot of places. And so, they'll handle getting it in there as well. I used Book Depository a lot when I was living in Asia.
Yeah, I know. So we understand. So that's basically, my thing, because, it is at a stage where I'm looking at, how to get it from my computer into a physical book. Yeah.
Amazon has just made it so easy. It just doesn't make sense to do it any other way.
Yeah.
Unless you're
only in places where Amazon is not, there's no Amazon presence. Like
China is one of those places where if you want to send it into China, that's a little bit different situation. But almost everywhere else, it's pretty easy to get it through either Book Depository or Amazon.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. All right, Cade. So Cade and I had a one-on-one session last week. So we talked pretty extensively, but catch me up, Cade. How's the last week been?
It's been good. I'm getting into a rhythm writing and it's coming together. It really is just committing to the time, like you said, just a little bit every day. I really don't have many questions because that was the problem. We kind of covered the problems last week, and so it's just coming together. And I just wanted to join today to listen in on the conversation, and it's been really useful. Obviously, I'm not to this point yet of publishing and marketing, but I'm just blown away by the speaking fees. Like, so
it sounds better than it is sometimes. I'm sure Stephen will tell you, like, it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Okay. Because it just feels like that's like the example you gave of someone, what they do 60 a year at 7,000 to 8,000. That's 480,000 a year.
Yeah, and his goal was to be $1 million speaker. Bear in mind, at the time he was doing 60 a year. Since COVID, I don't think he's doing that anymore. But also during COVID, he got married, so he might have multiple reasons why he's not doing that many anymore.
Okay.
Because you think about that. I mean, if you're married and you're doing 60
that's
gigs,
crazy.
Yeah, because I mean, and you can't miss speaking gigs. It's not like you can say like, oh, something happened, I'm not able to make it. It's like they're setting up an event around you. You have to show up.
Yeah.
And so 60 speaking gigs a year, like that's a lot of stress. That's a lot of travel expense. And I mean, sometimes they're covering your expenses, so you don't have that, but still, it's a lot of time. It's a lot of travel. It's a lot of time zones and bother and headache. And you've got to love traveling and love the speaking. And it's not super conducive to having a family. So,
yeah. So how many do you do a year now? Or are you super selective?
I haven't really been doing much of anything since COVID. I kind of got out of it and I haven't tried to get back into it.
Yeah.
Plus my personal brand is like all over the place. I'm doing too many different things. And so I don't think people know who I am or what I do anymore. But yeah, Steven says in the chat, he's doing 20 to 30 speaking gigs a year. That's a heavy schedule. Like that's a ton of travel. So it's tough. And you'll see, I mean, the trouble with speaking too is like you hear about these guys who make like 50 grand or something. You're like, oh, that's just like printing money. They're so in demand. But the trouble is the people who make 50 grand per speaking gig are making a lot more money doing something else. And so they're comparing and they're like, even at 50 grand, this isn't worth it for me because I could be working in my investment firm or whatever, and I could probably be making a lot more than that with my time. So the thing with the speaking gig stuff is as your value goes up as a speaker, your time value is probably also going up. And so it kind of stays in parity to the point where you're like, it's okay, but it's not the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah. No, that's good insight. It was just something, all new to me. So it's good to know.
Yeah. But I mean, we would all love to fly around getting 50 grand per speaking gig, but if we were the type of people who are in that kind of demand, we'd probably be doing something else. I keep thinking of Clayton Christensen, who was the Harvard professor that you and I talked about. He was making 50, 60 grand per speaking engagement, but he didn't do that many because it was hard and he wanted to be a family man, I think. So, by the way, Gary Vaynerchuk is, I think the last time I checked, he was 120, but that was like years ago. So he's probably like 150 or 180. And he does zero preparation, no slides, nothing. He just shows up and talks. So yeah, that'd be nice.
That's crazy. I'm just hardcore introvert, so I can only handle so many conferences a year, let alone the travel, like just the personality. Anyway.
Yeah.
No, I really don't have anything, Josh. Thanks for last week and just continuing to get in a rhythm. So.
Well, cool. Well, thanks, Cade. Anybody else want to go again? I see that Daniel and Stephen are chatting a little bit about speaking stuff in the chat there, but Steve, you want to go again? Let's see.
I'm going to hop off. Thanks, Josh.
Okay.
Actually, just a quick question. If you do get speaking gig on your expertise, it will be a good diving board to expose your book.
Yeah, I mean, speaking is great exposure. This is one of the I don't want to say it's a trick or anything, but a lot of speakers practice, I guess I should call it. A practice that a lot of speakers have is when they write a book, they'll do book giveaways instead of speaking fees, or they'll say, hey, instead of paying me $3,000, how about you buy a book for everybody attending the event?
That's exactly.
And that's, I mean, if it's a big event with hundreds of people or something, the event organizer might be willing to spend $5,000 or $6,000 or $10,000 buying a bunch of books because it adds value to the event in a different way. They've already got you as a speaker, but they might be willing to buy the book and spend a lot of money on that book in order to get it out to all those people. And then that's just getting the word out for you. And you take a hit because you don't get paid for that one event. But how much would it cost you to get your book in the hands of all those people?
Exactly.
Sometimes that's a great way to get the book out there and get more exposure and more demand for yourself. And on the other side, I've been an event organizer before recruiting speakers. And I've also found this is a great way to actually pay less sometimes for speakers, because I found that sometimes I can spend less on the books than the speaking fee. And the speaker is just happy that I'm buying their book. And so I've been on the other side of it too. So it goes both ways, I found.
Yeah, win-win. How do you feel about, I have been with 2 big bookstores in Hong Kong. There's an auditorium and thing. You might know of them. And there is a interest in having me do free signing, as well as like a 10-15 minute talk. Do you think those are productive?
I don't think they're productive in terms of, it's not a strategy for it's not something you can depend on to be your end game in terms of promoting your book. I think it's a nice thing to do, especially in Hong Kong. It's your hometown, it's your neighborhood. I think it's a nice thing to do. I think it's going to get the word out to a couple of people. It's not as effective as a lot of things that you could do online, but I think it's nice to do. And it can result in some great photos too, which then you can share on social media, and people say, oh, this guy's an author. Here he is doing a book signing. It kind of builds your personal brand. So I think it can be a good thing that way. But a lot of the authors I've talked to, it used to be the thing that you had to do a book tour, especially if you were with a traditional publisher. They made you do a book tour. You had to tour across the country in the US, and you had to go do all these book signings at all these bookstores. And the last several years, a lot of authors have said, I don't think this is really paying off. Like, I don't think it's worth it for me to spend 2 or 3 months of my life traveling across the country signing books when I can go online and I can do a bunch of social media stuff and get 10 times the exposure. And so the book tour has kind of died, especially with COVID, putting a nail in that coffin. I don't think the book tour is what it once was. And I think a lot less people are doing it. But I think it's a nice thing to do locally in your hometown type of thing, because it's so easy to do that. And it's just, I think it's kind of a nice gesture for the community. And again, you can take some good photos. So
yeah. Okay.
That's my take on it. But
thank you.
Now, that's the bookstore book tour. The speaking book tour, that's a whole different thing. If you can go speak at events that have 200, 500, 1,000, 2,000 people, and you're getting the word out to those people, and then they let you set up a booth or a table and you have your books there and you can give them out or you can sell them to people or something like that. I've been to events where they'll have like a book section for all the speakers, and you can go in there and it's like a little mini bookstore with like 10 or 15 books from all the speakers there. Something like that. Well, that's fantastic. That's a whole different type of book tour.
Okay.
Stephen, did you have some more
I had
you
two
wanted to
questions.
share?
I put them in the chat. So one was, because I have the paperback in my ebook, I haven't done a hardcover at all. So one, do you recommend a hardcover? And two, do I just need to contact my cover designer and say, hey, can you make a hardcover version for me? I'm just curious what that looks like. I use Ingram Spark. That's where I actually, so here's my book. I just got this delivered from Ingram like 2 days ago. So I actually have a physical copy of my book now, which is nice. But I'm just curious, the hardcover, like, is that worth it? And I mean,
I think it's worth it because it really doesn't cost much of anything to set up. You need another ISBN. You do have to hire the designer to do it. Ingram will give you a template for the hardcover so you can do the dust jacket. It'll take you a little bit of time to figure out the details of like which type of dust jacket you want and all that stuff. But I think it's pretty minimal time and effort to get that set up. And then it's just one more option and it looks more professional, I think. If you go to somebody's Amazon listing and you see that they've got all the formats, they've got hardcover, softcover, audio, and ebook, it just checks all those boxes and makes it look like, okay, this person's got it all. Whereas, I mean, somebody sent me a book the other day, and one of my book coaching clients sent me a book the other day, and they're like, hey, like, why didn't this book sell really well? And I went to the Amazon listing and all they had was a Kindle version. That's it. They had nothing else. Cover design was terrible. There were a bunch of things wrong. But just the fact that they only had the Kindle version, immediately I was just like, okay, this is not a serious author. Or if they went through a publisher, then their publisher is terrible that they only have the Kindle version up on their listing. Like, that should never be a thing that you only have the Kindle version up, unless you're doing like an ebook or something where it's like a 30-page thing and it's not like a real book type thing. But so yeah, and I think having the hardback, it just adds that credibility, even if nobody buys it. Just the fact that it's on your listing, it just looks more credible.
And it's POD, so I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, it's POD.
Yeah, so my other question has to do with Ingram and Amazon. So I have the Ingram account, but I also have an Amazon account where I also uploaded all the book information and the files and everything. So do I really need the Amazon account in that sense, or is it okay to keep both like I have it?
I have both. And the way I split it is I do the ebook and I do the paperback through Amazon, their POD. And then I do the hardcover through Ingram, and then I do the audiobook through ACX. So I have it split that way. And I like doing it that way because Amazon does a great job at the paperback POD. So I feel like having that all integrated in the same place makes it more reliable, probably, so that they really will never run out of my book because it's part of their supply chain. With the hardcover, I mean, if Amazon did hardcover the way that Ingram does hardcover, I would do the hardcover through Amazon. But since they don't, I have to go through Ingram. So I only use Ingram because I have to. Otherwise, I would be using Amazon for everything, because I just figure if it's running on an integrated system that's all tied together, it's going to be better in terms of managing supply and predicting and all that stuff. But since Amazon doesn't have that hardcover option, that's the only reason I go to Ingram.
Gotcha. Okay, and I have one last question. The audio. The audiobook. So I actually have a Heil, like your Heil headset thing. I have all of that because I was going to do a podcast several years ago and I ended up never doing it, but I have all the equipment. And so should I just record my own audio? I know there's standards. I was looking at ACX and I've got all the standards. I've got all the decibels. Like I've researched this pretty heavily, but I'm just curious, like, would it be wise to do my own audio and just upload the files and get it loaded that way? Because I don't have an audiobook version at all, but I've had several of my followers ask me for one now. And they actually want me to record it. And so because they're like, yeah, you can speak just fine and you could probably read fine too. And so anyways, I'm just curious your thoughts on the audio, since it sounds like you've done that.
Yeah. 100%, 120%, you should do the audio version. More than half of my sales are the audio version of my book. So if you don't have an audible version of your book, you're missing out on such a huge market there. It's one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't launch my audiobook when I launched my book. It came a couple months later. And I wish I would have had it when I launched my last book, because I missed out on a lot of sales during my launch period because I didn't have the audiobook. So I definitely get that done. In your case, I would very much recommend that you do the recording yourself versus hiring somebody else to do it. Because you are a speaker, and so people are going to know your voice. And I think because you're a public speaker, that having that voice on the book matters. I think it generally matters even if you're not a speaker, because most people want to hear from the author. They want to hear the author reading their own book. The exception would be like fiction and stuff. I mean, I don't care if J.K. Rowling reads Harry Potter. In fact, I don't want her to read Harry Potter. But when it's a business nonfiction book type of thing, it's really you. And so people really want to hear from you. And yet I went and I hired somebody else to record my last book. And the reason I did that is because I got into all that sound research and trying to figure out exactly the settings I needed to record it. And I just kind of got overwhelmed. I was just like, this is so complicated, trying to figure out if I've got it set up the right way and downloading all these files for whatchamacallit. And I was just like, I just kind of got sick of it. And I was already really busy. So I was like, I don't have time for this. I don't really want to figure this out. If somebody could sit down in my office and just do it for me, great. Then I would probably go ahead and record it. And then I was like, and then I have to record this. And if I make any little mistake, I got to edit it. And I just started thinking about it. I was just like, I don't want to do this. And then I reached out to a friend of mine who did the audio for my first book. And I was like, what would it cost me to get this recorded? And he's like, well, I really need to pay the rent this month, so I'll do it for $800. And I was like, done. Like, that's a deal. So,
okay. Can I just jump in, Stephen? In Hong Kong, where I am, I mean, it's the middle of the night, but there are audio engineers who are freelancers that kind of like roadies for a band that will come in and set up everything for you, and then you just press start and stop.
Oh, wow.
They leave. They will set up your equipment, or they'll rent you equipment. So you might want to find out whether you have that option where you are.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to get one of those people to come to my place, because I really want to record my books in the future. I want to do it, but
yeah, no, they
Yeah.
These guys are working on gigs, so like like the rent is due.
Yeah.
Literally, yeah. So just ask around, because I know like more than 10 people that I can call in Hong Kong and say, hey, come up and get my place set up. I got all the equipment, and then they set up. They know my office, so they just hang up the sound deadeners and all these things, put everything at the right place, and say, X, you stand here and face that way, and that's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's what I need, a recording studio.
No, you don't need a studio. They come in, they look at your room, and they say, oh, you got this wall there that's giving out too much reflection and echo, and then they just put up the whatever is needed.
Wow.
Yeah. So think about the parts that you can outsource of this. You can outsource somebody coming in to set up your tech the right way. You can outsource the editing once you're done, so that they do all the levels and make sure it fits and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can find other people to do all that stuff, all you have to do is press record and do it. And then you're good. And you could do that in one day. You could have it all done and then just send it off to somebody else and let them take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I used I think I used Reedsy when I did my editing, which was a really good experience. So do they have audio? I mean, is there a place like that where you could go get somebody that would take that on?
Yeah. They what the way that these guys work, because I also play music for fun. They just take whatever tracks that you have recorded, and they mix it, fine tune it, and get it ready for prime time for you.
Oh.
Yeah, Reedsy is a great resource.
Uh-huh.
But Upwork is also a great place just for finding contractors in general. So you might check out Upwork. Reedsy is great because it's book focused, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's great. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, Cynthia. Thanks for popping in.
Thank you. Sorry, it took a while to get on today.
Yep. Well, you're in the middle of moving houses, right?
We are. We're in the middle of escrow.
Well, thank you for taking time out from what I'm sure is a busy day to join us today. We've just been going around doing Q&A and answering questions and chatting here. Did you have any questions that you wanted to throw out at us, Cynthia?
No, I don't at this moment. I was hoping to get on earlier, so.
Okay. Well, if you think
my
of anything,
apologies. Hello, everyone.
no worries.
Hello.
If anything comes up while we're chatting here, then oh, we're at the hour. That went fast. I can't believe that. I felt like we were halfway through this. And I look at the clock and I'm like, oh, it's time. Well, hey, are there any last questions or comments from anybody then?
I would love to meet everybody.
We're a little spread out. Daniel's in Hong Kong. Olu is in Nigeria. I'm in Arizona. You're moving to Washington, right?
We are in Washington as we speak. Yeah.
Okay. Is that snow on the trees behind you?
That is snow. It snowed all morning.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm in Bellingham, Washington, and it's actually already melting too. So it's all right.
Cool. Well, we're going to wrap it up there unless anybody has any last things they want to say, but thank you all for coming, and we'll be back here next week, same time, same place every week. So thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.